The single biggest fear is that the child will someday take control and we may no longer be living in our own home. We'll be put into some assisted living, some nursing home, some place of care, a place that I don't want to be.
You are listening to the Aging Options podcast with elder law attorney Rajiv Nagaich. As the best-selling author of Your Retirement, Dream or Disaster, and host of 2 hit public television specials, Rajiv Nagaich has emerged as a retirement planning thought leader known for his willingness to disrupt the status quo. In this weekly podcast, Rajiv Nagaich offers piercing insights about the hidden traps in traditional retirement planning advice, along with straight talk about the problems during retirement that money, investments, estate plans, and insurance products don't address. If your retirement plan has been all about saving money, creating an estate plan, and buying long-term care insurance, what Rajiv Nagaich says may surprise you.
Happy holidays, everyone. Rajiv Nagaich with Aging Options on Aging Options, the podcast. This is the holiday season. We are going to be going to our parents' homes or our relatives' homes, hopefully all getting together and having a good time. And I truly hope you have the very best of holiday season this season around. But here's the reality that I want to go ahead and touch on today. Many of us are going to go see our parents and see that things are not probably what they used to be. Maybe the house is a little bit dirtier. Maybe the fridge is not really, has not been cleaned out for the last several months. And there'll be some disturbing signs. But can you even open the topic with your parents? The chances are your parents probably don't want anything to do with that. They just want to see you. They just want to show everything is fine and just have a good old merry time. But you may be a little concerned about the whole thing. So how are you going to open this conversation with your mom and dad? First of all, just understand the psychology of talking to a parent. Talking to a parent is talking to somebody who has always been an authority relative to you. They're the ones who raised you. They're the ones who made you who you and I are today. Why do you think they're going to be just overly excited about taking instructions from somebody they've been instructing all their life? The first big mistake that we end up making when we're talking to parents is that we try and tell them things that they should be doing because maybe they're not with the times. Maybe they're not looking at the bigger picture. I promise you, in their mind, they're the only ones who are the most sane people in the world. Everyone else is just second fiddle to them. So the first thing you need to understand, if you want to go ahead and get your parents' attention, it is not going to be by telling them what they ought to do. So if you're not going to tell them what they should do, the house is there, you can start. You're going to be asking questions. Where do you start the conversation? Here's where you start the conversation. Start with the knowledge that the single biggest fear that any person in retirement has, particularly as a parent relative to when they're talking to their children, the single biggest fear is that the child will someday take control and we may no longer be living in our own home. We'll be put into some assisted living, some nursing home, some place of care, a place that I don't want to be. That's the single biggest fear any retiree has. Let's start with that conversation. Just say to your parents or to your loved ones that you've been watching many of your friends deal with similar issues where a parent falls ill, the child goes there to take care of them, and the parents are totally going to shut the child out. Why? Because they don't want to go to a nursing home. They don't want to talk about that. And say to them that I would suspect that if you're like most people, probably what I'm going to be sometime in future, I probably will not want to go to a nursing home either. But mom, dad, tell me this. If you end up in the hospital today and the nurse is going to be asking me the question, which rehab center should I send your mom or dad to, or which place of care they should not be going home? How do you want me to answer that question? And chances are they're probably not going to have an answer, or at least they will be open enough to talk to you. Tell them that you want to help them come back home. Assure them that you want everything right, whatever their definition right is, you want to do right by them. But what is that definition? Start the conversation there. So really it goes something like this. Mom, dad, I've been watching my friend just recently. They had the dad ended up in the hospital after a stroke. and the hospital refused to send the dad back home. And that led to a battle royale. And I'm suspicious that if you end up in a similar situation, the hospital calls me and says, hey, which rehab center do you want to send your mom and dad to? You probably will want me to say that you want to come back home. But what does that plan look like? Can we talk about it? And there'll be 3 elements that you're looking at. Where will I go? Your parents probably want to come back home. Who will take care of me? So if you're long distance, if you're not living in the same house, then you need to start thinking about a geriatric care manager, caregivers who eventually will be need to call on, and have these places on standby ahead of time. At least identified, if not on standby, at least identified what phone number you're going to end up calling. And then who will pay for all of this? So you need to have an elder law attorney or somebody who can help you trigger a long-term care insurance policy, look into a reverse mortgage, look into VA, look into Medicaid. But you need to have all these pieces in place ahead of time. So now the call comes from the hospital. You have talked to your mom and dad. You have assured them that you are going to do everything it takes to try and bring them back home if that's at all possible. You know who the care manager will be, who will make that happen. A nurse working with the hospital will get a lot less resistance to you being able to bring your parents back home than you, who the hospital doesn't know anything about. So having a care manager, having an elder law attorney in place, and having all this thing written out, I think this is an easy conversation that you can open up with your parents if you start the right way. Mind you, even at that, your parents may not want to go down that route, right? Maybe they're just totally shut to having the conversation. That doesn't take away the fact that you will have to act on their behalf. And so how do you prepare for that? For that, I will suggest that you go to AgingOptions.com and just register for one of these upcoming education events that we do. They take about an hour long, and I break it down for people. That if your parent is saying they want to be able to come back home, and you have to start advocating, today, while they're relatively healthy and while you don't have to react in an emergency situation, what steps do you want to have put in place so that when the day comes, there's a plan and you just follow step 1, step 2, step 3. Your parents are able to come back home. There is no fighting around that. You know exactly who you're going to call, where the money will come from. Everything falls in place. And that's what we do at Aging Options. Help people deal with these life's issues that seemingly don't have any answers in a much more easy and a more forceful way. If you have any questions, email us at radio@agingoptions.com. Like us, share us, and join us on the next episode of Aging Options, the podcast.
Hello, producer Alec here. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Aging Options, the podcast. If you would like to know more about this topic and many other topics surrounding retirement, aging, and how to ensure that you're able to live out the retirement you deserve, please head on over to AgingOptions.com. If you want a comprehensive, deep dive into planning your retirement and don't want to wait until next week's podcast, I highly recommend Rajiv's best-selling book, Your Retirement, Dream or Disaster. You can find both soft and hardcover editions on the AgingOptions.com website. Please follow us on social media at Aging Options. If you want to see this podcast in video form, you can find us on YouTube, also at Aging Options. Until next week, age on.